Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite books of 2017. So in general, 2017 was a really good reading year. There was a lot of books that I loved and like ones that I know will stick with me forever. So I'm really excited that I got to read those. There was only a couple misses. So I'll do a least favorites video that will be up on Friday. So keep your eyes peeled for that. So overall, I ended up reading 50 books in 2017 with a total of 17,207 pages. So I keep it all in my bullet journal so I know. But yeah, so I'm just going to cover the books that were my favorite of 2017. So these are like the standouts. I have 13 here, so I'll try to keep this video quick, and if I have reviews to these, I'll link them all down below so you can go check out my spoiler-free reviews. They're a bit more in depth. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So first book would have to be my actually first Tales and Teacups book club pick, which is The Fall of Marigolds by Susan Mesner. And this is a historical fiction that kind of has a dual storyline. So basically it takes place during the early 1900s following a girl who is a nurse on Ellis Island, and she is dealing with a lot of like guilt with guilt following a death of someone that she knew. She experienced a fire factory and just she's like run away to Ellis Island and she's kind of struggling with that. And then it flashes forward to 2011 following another woman whose husband had died in the World Trade Center on 9/11, and just kind of the 10-year anniversary and the aftermath. So both these women are dealing with guilt and with falling with death of someone, fall from the result of a death of someone that they loved. And I thought this book was really impactful. I didn't really have a lot of I didn't really know what to expect going into it, but this book was really impactful. There's so many beautiful quotes in here, and go check out my review where I go a little bit more in depth to it, but I want to keep this video quick. But this book was just really beautiful, and I think it kind of has a really good message of kind of moving on, not like forgetting, but just letting go and moving on with your life. So yeah, this book was just really, really good. Next I have Still Life by Louise, which was the first book in the Inspector Gamache series, and I read this earlier, like in the winter, I want to say around March or so, and it follows a detective named Inspector Gamache, obviously, who lives in Quebec. And what I really liked about this is that I didn't guess who the killer was at all. Like, it was a total surprise, and I was guessing till the end. But the author, really made such complex characters, and it was almost like kind of a Stars Hollow feel to it, where everyone in the town, and I could like picture myself living in a town where this murder takes place. So I'm really interested to continue on with the series, because there was tidbits of what kind of the past of Inspector Gamache that we kind of get little tidbits of it here and there. So I'm really excited to continue on with this series this year. And also, if you're Canadian, like, it has little Canadian culture things that you will get in there, like Timmy's and all that. So this was a really fun read, and I'm really excited that I picked this series up. Next, this one is A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas, and this is the third book in the Court of Thorns and Roses trilogy. And I hated the first book in this series. I love the second one, and the third one, I didn't think it was good as the second one, but I still liked it, and I read it like within a couple days. Like, I was attached to it. I think like the books, I realize that there are problematic aspects to the book, like the book series in there, but I think it's just a fun series, and it's like a world to get into, and like I loved how everything kind of came together. And I do feel like the ending, it could have been a little bit more realistic. But yeah, I'm excited to see kind of the novellas and the spin-off novels, so I'm really excited to see those later this year. So this one, I like this series a lot better than Throne of Glass, because I do not like the direction that Throne of Glass has gone to after the second one. Like, the series has just gone downhill, and I just like want to read them now just to know what happens, because I've been committed for so long. So at least it will be ending this year, thank goodness. Next, I have The Girl in the Ice by Robert Bryzenda, and this was another kind of murder mystery series that I picked up, and it's the first book in the Erica Foster series, and I really like this. It follows Erica Foster, who's a detective in London, and again, like Inspector Gamache, she kind of has a traumatic past where she was running a drug bust, and her husband, who was a part of that team, died, and several members during that. So she's kind of suffering from that loss as well, and PTSD. But she basically, the premise of this one is that a woman, or like a young woman who's from a very influential family family in England is found dead in the ice of this pond, and this leads to a lot of issues because the family is very influential. It leads to kind of the police not being able to kind of talk to the family and all that. And this book was really good. It kept me on the edge of my seat, and it's like at the end of the chapter it was like a cliffhanger. I was like, oh, I need to know what happened, so I like just kept reading, and I read this one really quickly. So like again, there's three. The third one I will talk about in a little bit, like murder mystery series that I started this year, and I cannot wait to continue on with them. Next, I read The Secret Keeper by Kate Moore, and this is, again, another book that I've been talking about all year since I've read it. And this is definitely probably within the top 5 books I've read in my entire life. And basically the premise of it is this girl, when she is like 16, she's hanging out in the family's like tree house, and she witnesses this man come onto her property, have like a confrontation with her mom, and her mom ends up stabbing him with a knife and killing him. And she never discussed that ever. She never talked to it with anyone in her family, like until her mother is kind of very elderly with dementia, and she kind of brings it up again. So she's trying to find this, like whatever happened, like to like whatever led that man to be murdered on basically their doorstep. And this book, like, it kept me guessing till the very end. Like I was glued to the book. Like I finished it, like I read like the last 300 pages in one sitting. Like I was like, I could not put it down, and it was just amazing. So I think you need to go into this kind of relatively blind, not knowing the plot. Like it's a solid 5 out of 5 star book with me forever, will be with me in my life, and I really want to reread it again in 2018. Next, I have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and this was a book that I've had on my shelf for a while, and I heard everyone like rave about how amazing this book was. So I finally decided to pick it up, and boy was I blown away. Yeah, so I didn't really know what to expect going into it, and I think again with this one, it's better to go into the book blind, not really knowing much. But basically it's like a circus that comes and goes without warning, and it's only open at night. So I think that's the only thing you really need to know about this book. But I was blown away by how much, like, I love how it took place in the mid 1800s, and how like there's a couple storylines interwoven within it, and how at the end they all came together seamlessly. And the book is very atmospheric, and I think that's what makes it very unique, is that like I could like picture the food that was like it was being talked about. I could smell the circus and everything there. So it was a very entirely new reading experience, and it was just amazing. So if you've heard a lot about it and you're skeptical like I was, like, pick it up. You will not be disappointed, and it's just amazing. Next, I have 2 books. So this is Blood on the Tracks and Dead Stop by Barbara Nicholas, and they're the first and second book in the Sydney Rose Parnell series, which I started over the summer, and I love them. Like I said, this was a really good year for like the murder mysteries and discovering new ones. So like this one follows, like, I think what's really unique about it is that Sydney is an ex-Marine, and we follow her after she's come back from the war. And she is essentially a railroad cop. And I believe both these books do a really good job of kind of shedding light on PTSD and how there's not a lot of resources available for people who come back from the war, which I really, really liked. So I think that one was really good. And also she has like a canine sidekick, which it was really neat as well. So both these kind of are murder mysteries, and just pick them up. They're so good. And it had my heart beating, the hair rising up on my arms. Like, that's how good it was. Next, I have another Kate Moore book, and it is The Forgotten Garden. Again, this is one I think you just need to go into it not knowing too much about it, but basically it follows a girl named Nell who on her 18th birthday finds out that the parents that she's known like all her life are not her actual parents. Like, she was found on the deck of a boat after it's departed, and so they claim her in as her own. So she that changes her world forever, and she kind of has an identity crisis. So kind of flash forward to present day after Nell has passed away, her granddaughter learns this about her grandmother, and so she's kind of in search for the family that she's never known, essentially. And the only thing that she kind of knows is that there's some connection to this author who's wrote this fairy tale book. So, and then it kind of flashes back to the early 1900s following a girl named Eliza in England. So I think this one was a really good book. Again, I think this is one that everyone needs to read. This one, again, is in my top 5 books of my lifetime, and I just think you really need to pick it up. It is amazing. Again, just take my word for it and pick it up. Next, Next is a highly anticipated book of mine, and it was I Know a Secret by Tess Gerritsen, and this was the newest book in the Recieve Isles installment. The last one didn't come out for like 2 years like before, so I was really, really excited for this one. And it was just nice being back in this world, and Tess Gerritsen is one of my favorite authors of all time, and this book was so different. Like, I was super excited to pick, like, when this came out, like, as soon as I saw it, I pre-ordered it right away, and I finished it in like 2 days. Like, I could not put it down. And I love just kind of seeing the dynamics of these characters because we've been following them for so many years, and I like read this series when I had a lot of health issues going on, and it kind of helped me get through kind of the emotional impact of those kind of health things. So this series is near and dear to my heart, so I will forever rave about this series. And this book was really unique as well too, because we just went to Boston a couple days, we just came back from Boston a couple days after this book came out, and like, so when she was talking about different places, like, oh, I actually know what that is now, so I was really excited about that. And this one kind of has a curveball in it as well, just in terms of like everything. So this one was really unique, so I was like loving this book. Next, I have What Happened by Hillary Clinton, and this again was a very much anticipated book. Just basically everything that happened with the election. It was just chaos, and I know a lot of people are upset with everything. In this book, she is very candid with everything that's happened, and she is very honest with her flaws and like what she could have done differently and her regrets. But again, at the same time, it is very frustrating to just how the whole thing played out in the system. And there's one chapter in particular that was really impactful for me, and it was of women in politics, and it talks about how like there's a double standard for women and just kind of the harassment that women face, just not only in politics but just everywhere else. And it's really frustrating, but it was a good closure for her, I think, from kind of stepping out of kind of the spotlight and all that, and just being honest of how it impacted her. And this book was just really good. My sister read it too, and she loved it. Like, she was obsessed with it, and she kept talking about it. So it is a really, really good book. And I think if you were very upset with everything that happened, like that's happening in American politics now and just happened during the election, I think this book would be perfect for you. Next, I have Quiet by Susan Cain, and this was again another book that was my Tales and Teacups book club pick, and I think I read this at the perfect time. It basically talks about the power of being an introvert, and this was something like I had it tabbed like crazy, and I was like, that applies to me, and I made me kind of learn more about myself and kind of how my skill set, if me being quiet, is unique, and how I can use that as a power, and it can be beneficial in a lot of different environments, either at school or at work, and how kind of our system today is set up for extroverts to succeed. So this was a very kind of eye-opening read, and I learned so much about myself, and I read it at a perfect time where I'm kind of can like use the stuff that I learned in there to my advantage and help me kind of excel at school and at work. So I was like, this book was like perfect for me to read when I did. And again, this is a book that was like just so good. It is like kind of, it's like, it's a lot of information, and there's a lot of resources in this book, like references, but it's almost written as a narrative, so it's easy to follow. So like if you're a little bit worrisome that it's like reading a textbook, it's not. Like, it's a very much conversational narrative, and yeah, it was just amazing. Next, I have Before the Devil Breaks You by Liv Bray, and this is the third book in the Diviner series, and I had really kind of mixed feelings going into this one because I loved the first one. I did not like the second one, and so I was really nervous going into it. It did take me a while to kind of get back into this world, but once I did, like, I was obsessed. Like, I could not put the book down. This takes place in the 1920s, so the author does not shy away from kind of the racial issues, the eugenics movement, kind of the treatment of Native Americans and racism, and she doesn't shy away from that. And she also draws a lot of parallels to today and like today's political climate, and how basically we're a nation of immigrants and like all that. Like, I will link my review where I talk about her author note that was just amazing, so go check it out. Like, it was just really, really good. But yeah, like I said, like there's like two characters that I cannot stand, but other than all, I like seeing the character development. I think Evie, Sam, and Theta are my favorites, so just kind of seeing them grow throughout this one. So I can't wait for the next one to come out. Maybe like we had to wait 2 years in between the second and third, so I don't know when the next one's gonna come out, but I'm really excited, and it left on such a cliffhanger. So yeah, And finally, the last book that was my favorite of 2017 was Winter Garden by Kristen Hanna. And this was the Tales and Teacups book club pick for the month of December. And Kristen Hanna is by far one of my favorite authors of all time. I've read so many of her books. I think this was her 7th book of hers that I've read, and she's just a really good author. And so this one basically follows, like all her books, the story of 3 women. And so this one, it follows a mother and her 2 grown-up daughters, and they have a very strained relationship. So the mother is very cold and distant, and because of that, the daughters don't have a good relationship with each other or their mother as well. So when their father, who is like basically the linchpin or glue of their family, passes away, like everything goes into chaos. Like his dying wish was for his wife to tell her fairy tale of the girl and the prince. And so when she starts telling that, like it takes place during like the siege of Leningrad, like leading up to it. So like the girls start to realize that maybe there's more to this story that meets the eye. Like maybe it's not a fairy tale, like there's maybe some truth to it. So I'm just gonna leave it there, but this book really impacted me. It did take me a little bit to get into it until like the mother starts telling the fairy tale. Like that's when I really got into it. But yeah, it was just really impactful, and it kind of left me raw at the end where I didn't know how I felt. Like I felt so many things, and it was heartbreaking and sad. And I think like the author did a really good job of seamlessly weaving in the fairy tale to kind of like the present story, and I didn't feel like the book lost like momentum or any of that. So I really loved it. And if you're a historical fiction fan, I think this would be perfect for you, because it kind of deals with kind of a side of World War II that we don't really hear about, because this like fairy tale takes place during the siege of Leningrad, which is something I feel like historical fiction, World War II kind of books don't really center around. They're usually on Europe. So I think this one was a really unique reading experience, and I loved it. So yeah, I just recommend you pick this book up, especially because it is so cold outside now that it's a perfect book to read during the winter. So that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you read any of these books, or what were some of your favorite books that you read this year. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.